We are back with another amazing professional, Coach Sheri from TeenWise. So first things first, hey, Coach Sheri, thanks for being here.
I'm so glad to be here. I'm excited whenever I can talk about loneliness, girl drama, all that stuff.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who may be tuning in for the first time, I'm Clarissa. I'm the founder of Parent Tween Connection, and we are where parents go when they don't know where to go. Why? Well, partly because we bring amazing folks like Coach Sheri in to share their wisdom with you and give you insight, give you ways to change, adapt, modify, improve. I don't know, but get new ideas about how to engage with those creatures known as teens and tweens in our lives. And, a lot of times I hear from parents that they're able to take these conversations that they've heard and go talk to their kids and be like, I heard this really interesting conversation today about insert topic here. Is that true for you? So these are great conversation starters. I love it. So with Coach Sheri today, we are talking about more specifically geared toward young girls, but we're talking about loneliness. And not just like some of these social fluctuations. I know we're going to get into some of that, but that pervasive chronic loneliness that it seems like a lot of girls navigate. So first things first, Coach Sheri, before we dig into that, give us a little bit of background. Who are you? How did you get into this? And why are you really driven to help the parents of girls, especially?
Yes. So, hello, I'm Coach Sheri. I'm the founder of TeenWise, and I'm an international friendship expert. I talk about friendships with girls and boys, but mostly girls, between the two. And I got into this space because I've been in the psychology world for 30 years. A little over 15 years ago, I was working for the Women's Sports Foundation, creating curriculum for them about lifting girls up. When the grant ran out for that, I was like, I've got to continue working with teens. And as I started that journey of, having my own, I realized that there was an area that girls needed support. And what was happening was they didn't get the support until it became clinical depression or clinical anxiety, because the parents were like, yeah, well, they don't need a therapist yet, so we don't know where to go. So that's where I come in. I'm working as a coach, not as a therapist. And I'm helping to support girls that just need to understand friendship dynamics, how to have conflict, how to think differently about it. So I'm passionate about that because I know when girls are supporting each other, that the world is just a better place.
Absolutely. And that is not just young girls, that is including us as adults.
Absolutely.
We work together, human thing, but I think especially with the way that girls are wired. And just to put it out there, I presume we're talking largely in a cisgender, cis female, but even for transgender females, like, so the dynamics are different. And so we're definitely coming at this from the feminine lens, no matter what.
Exactly. Yeah. It doesn't matter what the pronouns are, right? It matters what these systems are like. And so that's that, as you point out, like a feminine energy is the dynamics are different socially.
Sure. Awesome. So let's start kind of from the beginning. Why is it, from your perspective, that girls end up feeling this loneliness from the beginning, even when they're being sociable and engaging with other girls or boys? Why is it that girls are navigating this?
Yeah. So if we look at, I've been doing this for a while, and I saw a huge shift with COVID, because what happened with COVID is we were actually saying we need to isolate, we need to stay apart, right? And when they got back together, there was still a distance, right? Because we had masks on, you had to stay 6 feet apart. They weren't encouraging, and I say they, anybody in society wasn't really encouraging get to know new people. It was all about distance. And many of the teens went through COVID in these isolated, times when they were supposed to be socially developing. So while they got back to be around people, they didn't understand, or they didn't learn the skills to have deep connections with people. So I think that's why we're seeing this uptick in loneliness, is because they don't know how to have the deep friendships. We also saw a spike in loneliness when social media came out, when smartphones came out. They create this false sense of connection, but it's a
Mhm.
very superficial connection. It's not a real deep connection. And so while they're creating friends, they're maybe even part of a friend group, they have, 500 friends on social media, they feel lonely because they're not connecting.
And those are a couple of different directions that we could go with the conversation that, well, I'm going to do what we can to keep it on track. But
Yeah.
there's certainly a lot of conversation for families about when is it appropriate for your kiddo to have a smartphone? When is it appropriate for your kiddo to have access to social media? And I think there are valid points on both sides of the argument there.
Mhm.
Teaching them, certainly we need to protect them, but we also need to teach them how to navigate that. But again, that's kind of ancillary here, separate.
Mhm.
So when we start recognizing, like you say, we start seeing some of this loneliness come up, but parents are like, I don't, like, my kid doesn't need a therapist. We're not at the point of clinical anxiety, clinical depression. Parents are the first line of defense. They're the first ones to notice the changes in behavior, but they're also the first ones who can step in ways to help build some of like the resiliency that many of our guests talk about,
Yeah.
and to build some of those skills. So what are some strategies, number one, that they can implement at home? And then
Mhm.
number two, how do they determine when it's appropriate to step in versus when it's appropriate to say, I'm going to let them kind of navigate this on their own?
Yeah. So I think before we answer what to do is to really understand the situation and to understand loneliness. So loneliness in and of itself is not a negative. It's simply an emotion that says, hey, something needs to change. You're wired for connection. You have a desire for this connection. So your body is feeling that. When it becomes chronic loneliness, that's when that loneliness becomes part of their identity. Our teens, their job right now, it's identity versus confusion, according to the Erickson psychology stages. And so when they have chronic loneliness, it becomes their identity. I'm a loner.
Mhm.
Nobody likes me. Everyone finds me annoying. It's impossible for me to make friends. All of those are internalized. And then what happens is subconsciously, even there's behaviors that continue to create that isolation and that loneliness. So we have to recognize that first and foremost. If your child is lonely in a temporary manner, that's not bad. Support them to make connections. If it is chronic, that's when they need more of that professional support. For parents at home, what it looks like is connecting with your teen, because connection is the most important thing, whether it's with you or you're volunteering and you're connected with somebody older than you, younger than you. That then creates the physiological setting, if you will, to connect with your peers. So we have to kind of change the trajectory of their body, change the trajectory of their thoughts that they can connect. People do like me, and then that will help them with their peers.
Got it. So, what are some ways that they can do that connection? Like some strategies that you
Mhm.
had indicated you might have up your sleeve to share?
Yeah. So what I would say is that if you realize that your teen is in that lonely space, right? Like it seems like it's chronic. There's nothing that's changing. I would say first of all, avoid the whole just go talk to someone, because that is so overwhelming for teens who are feeling lonely. And it's also like, well, don't you think I've tried that before? So that strategy doesn't help. And we have to avoid three different strategies that we as parents often fall into. And that is, the first is dismissive. It's no big deal. You'll make friends. They're coming. Doesn't matter what those people think. Everybody's going to love you if you talk to them. It simplifies it so much that the teens are thinking, you don't get me. So I'm not going to talk about this with you anymore. The second is dramatic. You don't want to be dramatic about it. Like, this is so horrible. Why does nobody like you? Or why can't you make friends? And you can't live like the, that when we allow ourselves to show up in this emotionally heightened space, our kids are like, whoa, back off. Like, you're not helping
Mhm.
me. And also, our girls don't want to make us feel bad. So when they see that we're crying or we're upset about it, they're like, oh, I'm not going to tell her about how I'm feeling anymore, because, she's going to be upset. And then
Mhm.
the third piece is, what do we cover? Dismissive, dramatic, intrusive. So we have to realize we can't fix it. We can support our kids. We can give them the skills they need to create new connections, but we can't fix it. And so when they're little, we get to set up play dates and such. But when they're older, if we try to set up those play dates, it can really backfire. And the other kids can be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe her mom's telling my mom. And then our kids, if we do that, will be upset. Like maybe they don't like that person. Maybe they've tried to connect and it didn't work out. So then they start to feel powerless rather than empowered.
Awesome. So, I really like the fact that you're like, hey, be careful that you don't go into these 3 steps. Are there a couple of things that you could recommend of ways that they can engage to, because I will often share, I'm definitely more of the introvert, and I just naturally don't go to other people to talk in the same way about this. I should say I'm more of an internal processor for my own stuff, and so never mind the complexities of my connection or lack thereof with my mom, right? Like I just don't tend to do that with people. And so given that sometimes that's the case, that you just have a kid who's more of an internal processor, or if a kid just isn't as likely to want to engage or to have those conversations, what are some things that you've seen parents navigate successfully with to help open the door at the very least? Because we can't, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it, right? So you told us some of the things not to do. What are some things that could be effective?
Yeah, so one of the things is if your child does open that door just a crack, right, where they are talking about they don't have friends, or they're upset that they are alone on the weekends and don't have those birthday parties and stuff to go to first and foremost, listen. And if they start talking to you, don't interrupt them. Let them have that stream, that flow of words. If you are trying to seem engaged by asking a question, they might answer it, but then they're like, where was I? Okay, I'm done talking. So we want to just let them talk as much as we can. And this, by the way, is based on the love framework that I talk a lot about. So the first is listen. The second is to offer advice. If they don't want it, do not give it to them, because if they're not ready for it and they don't want to receive that gift from you, that wisdom, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. And they'll just feel annoyed by it. And I hear from a lot of teens, they are so tired of lectures from adults. So we want to avoid that lecture and that I have so much wisdom, let me share it all. They're going to tune out. So wait until they say yes, right? Even if they say no, they may come back to you knowing, oh, my mom, my dad is there ready to help me out when I am ready for it. The third piece is, go ahead.
To be clear, that would sound something like, are you looking for advice, or do you need an ear?
Yeah,
or can I offer a thought? Or do you need to figure this out on your own? Something like that, right? So it's not actually giving the advice, it's inviting them to say yes to the advice before you give it.
Exactly. Yes. So do you want me to just listen, or do you want advice? The one caveat I would say on that is change up how you say it. Teens do not like scripted language. So if you need to sit and write down what are the things I could say so that you can go through those and not use the same wording every time. But yes, absolutely. You are not offering the actual advice. You're saying, do you want any advice?
Cool.
Good clarification.
Carry on. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Listen, offer advice, but not the actual advice.
Exactly. Okay, and then the next one is validate emotions. No matter what they're going through, the emotions themselves are valid. It may not be the behaviors. You may feel like the emotions are bigger than the situation, but still what they're feeling is what they're feeling. And then the E stands for empower them. And this is where you are offering them skills. You're not stepping in to fix it, but you're offering them advice on how to connect, and the advice when they're ready for it, right? And even asking that question, are you open to advice? Do you want me to just listen? That's empowering them, because you're saying you have the choice if you want this advice or not. And when they're feeling lonely, or if they are having girl drama, they're feeling very powerless. So we want to hand that power back to them.
And it's amazing how giving them agency in that decision and then honoring it, I think that's the next step, right? Is when we offer it, we have to be okay if they say, no, I don't want it. And that's really hard for the adults in the equation sometimes. Like you said, but we have this life experience, but we know, we can see from the outside, what we think is going on.
Right. Yeah.
And we can
Very
help you
true.
fix it. But okay, fine,
Mhm.
do it your own way.
Yeah.
Make mistakes,
Yeah.
right? Like I can hear from my mother, like, but I could help you.
Right. But we also have to be careful because oftentimes we think we have the answers, but if they go and they try it, especially if we push them when we make them try our advice, it might not work. It might make things
Mhm.
worse. So we have to set it up for when we give them advice or when they are making the decision to do X, Y, or Z, that they are owning the outcome. Like whatever happens, they made that choice versus I tell you to go do this, then they're going to be mad at you, and that's not going to help either. That's going to create
Mm-mm.
disconnection. We also have to realize
Absolutely.
the teen world is very complicated. So while we might have this formula for go do this to make friends, it doesn't mean it's going to work because it depends on the other person on the other side.
Sure. Absolutely. So we've talked a bit about this distinction between kind of like the seasons of life where we don't have as many friends or as much opportunity to go engage versus when it becomes chronic.
Yeah.
How would you define chronic? Like, at what point does a parent need to go, I need to step in,
Mm-hmm.
or I see that this is becoming the identity? Maybe that's part of the indicator, right?
Yep.
Versus when do I get help? When do I acknowledge that I don't, that I can't support my kid by myself?
Mm-hmm. I think there's a natural instinct on this, but to give you some
Okay.
examples here, I think that when you see that your child's isolating themselves, when you see that they've given up, when you hear them say, I don't care if I have friends, that's an indicator. They absolutely care. They are wired to have friends. Doesn't mean they need 20 friends. It doesn't even mean they need friends that they hang out with on the weekends, but they need connection.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you hear them saying things like that, that's when you know they have that chronic loneliness and they have internalized the belief that they don't need friends, and which is not true. It really means they've given up on making friends. That's the biggest indicator. Also, when you see the mood, right? When they're dropping out of everything. And I'm not just talking about depression, right? Depression, we've got all these other signs. But when you notice they're just withdrawing from things, part of that is the social piece. So if they're dropping out of a sports team, for instance, it might be because the social dynamics were not working for them. That might be
Mm-hmm.
why. So you just want to watch the overall mental health of your children, and also what are they doing with their time, and that is really a key indicator.
So then obviously there's coaching and then there's therapy. And
Mhm.
those are two avenues that could, and there's multitudes of individual avenues within those avenues.
Yes.
What are some of the supports that you know exist in that parents could explore when they're getting to a point that they're like, ooh, there's more here than I know how to navigate?
Mm-hmm. Well, of course, I will say, as a friendship coach, that I am definitely a resource. And with many coaches that I'm sure that you're interviewing, there's lots of free resources that are out there if you go and
Mm-hmm.
connect with them. So for me, go to my website and see what's there. I do have more in depth where you can work with me one to one with moms to say, how are you going to support your particular kid? What is their situation? So that's me. In addition to that, if you have a child who you see is struggling socially because of the social skills at a very basic level, there are social skills groups out there that you can have your kids go into. It's really difficult, though, if you force them into it. You've got to find a way for them to say yes to it. I
Sure.
think that's very key. And then there's also you can have them, there's lots of videos you can watch on how do you connect, how do you step into a group, things like that too. For the parents and how they're supporting their kids, it's important to understand the teen world. So reading books like Untangled, Under Pressure, things of that sort, where you
Mm-hmm.
get where they're coming from. Because when you understand it from the teen level versus I, as an adult, know how to do everything, you can then step into their world and figure out how to best support them.
Well, and I also am thinking, in that the coaching realm or in the therapy realm, which there is absolutely a place for therapy, certainly,
Mhm.
especially if we
Absolutely.
have co-occurring mental health difficulties and whatnot.
Mhm.
Um, I've seen for years parents and even back in our day, right? Parents finding the support for the kiddos,
Hmm.
and in some ways going to the professional and going, here, help my kid.
Yes. Uh-huh.
But they're not necessarily finding the help for themselves. And when I say help for themselves, I mean it in two ways. Number one, it's hard on the parents when your children are struggling, right? So finding
Hmm.
the support for yourself,
Yeah.
but then also potentially looking at it and going, how am I potentially contributing to this unintentionally? And that's the point I really want to make is like, I don't think
Yeah.
there's parents out there who are like, I am out to screw up my kid, right? Like at all, right?
Yeah.
But we also don't recognize the influence that the adults have, and that sometimes completely unintentionally, we're really trying to help the kids in our lives. And sometimes
Yeah.
we're making it worse and don't even know it. So when I say get the help, I mean that in on both sides.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest pieces is that when your child is struggling and when you're seeing that they're lonely and people aren't accepting them and they don't have friends, we take it very personally, obviously,
Mhm.
because we want people to see the amazingness that we see in our own children. And so
Sure.
we have to manage that emotional turmoil that we are going through. Otherwise,
Mhm.
what happens is we bring our kids into our emotional turmoil and it becomes a co-rumination situation. So we make it worse because of our emotions and the words that we're using to try and support them. I'm like, woe
Right.
is you, poor you, I don't know why nobody likes you. They internalize that not as, oh, my mom cares. They internalize it as, yeah, nobody does like me. Yeah, woe
Mhm.
is me. I don't have any control. So we have to be very mindful of our support. And that starts with taking care of ourselves, as you're pointing out.
For sure. Awesome.
Mhm.
Coach Sheri, we obviously, as with so many of the guests who join me here, we could talk for many, 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 many hours about
Yes.
these things as we work to help families and teenagers. I've got one final question for you from my end before we share with folks how they can find you. So everything that we do here at Parent Tween Connection is based on what I call the foundations of connection, where I sat down with myself, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago, and I was like, why is it that my clients feel more comfortable talking to me when I'm not even a mom myself, but I
Mhm.
work with teenagers and I have now for almost 30 years? Why do they feel more comfortable talking to me than they do talking to their own parents? And
Mhm.
so the acronym that I came up with was connection. And so the concepts are these, and I'm going to rattle them off quickly for anyone tuning in. If you'd like to print these out, we do have them as a free download on our website. Put them on the fridge, put them on the bathroom mirror, whatever. But I'd love to know which one kind of like jumps up and rings the bell for you today. So we have create a safe place, observe, non-judgment, nod and smile, explore, challenge your truths or curiosity, take your time, innovate, own your own story, or nurture.
Ooh, I say the ones that stand out in this particular thing would be non-judgment and owning, excuse me, owning your own story. Those two things for sure, because the non-judgment, when we're talking about loneliness, whether we admit it or not, we start judging our kids. And I hear this a lot. What's wrong with them, right? And I'll see parents even that they want their kids to start dressing a certain way, doing their hair a certain way, so that people will be their friends. And so we've got to put that judgment to the side. And then, yeah, owning your own story, which we were just talking about. You got to look into your own past to see what's coming up for you.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to round it out. If folks resonate and they want to know more about you and the support that you offer, what's the best way for them to find you?
Go to my website. It's the easiest way, teen-wise.com. And there you'll find access to webinars on loneliness, on girl drama, and then access to the Mom Wise Connection, which is, really focused on girls and friendship and girl drama.
That's fantastic. All right. So, for those of you tuning in, if you have not yet, make sure to follow or subscribe on whatever platform you're finding us on. And Coach Sheri and I are actually about to go into the Parent Tween Village, which is our family focused community, our parent focused community, where we're going to have an exclusive members only conversation with the oh so true, sadly, title Girls Are Just Mean. We're going to get into what that phrase means, the impact that it has, and how we can navigate through it. So, Coach Sheri, thank you for your time and stick around just a couple minutes.